This is the Thompson session, Embedding Friends Certification and Initial Teacher Training. And I'd like to welcome Brenda Furman, Vanessa Fitzpatrick, and Janet Wheaton. And welcome to Thompson and to the Mystery Lake School Board office. And we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's something very scary about having a mic in your hand, and actually that's what we're sharing today, is about programming to help all of us deal with anxiety, because I know that every time I do something with students where I have that leadership role, that responsibility to see what's going to happen, I find I grow the most, and that's certainly the case with this. I want to thank Ken Klassen for his words this morning. I have the extreme good fortune to be working on this project with two awesome servant leaders. And I think that's something that I know for sure is alive and well in the communities I'm part of in Thompson. And I see a lot of other ones in this room too. So, and I'm sure it's the same where everyone else is. This project is where to start? In 10 minutes, an hour's worth of stuff. The Fun Friends is a universal program, and I'll show a bit more about that. But first of all, we just jumped in from the ground up and took a well-established program and followed through on a question that was brought up by people in the program. What are we doing about this in initial educator training? So we were fortunate to be able to get a small seed research grant internally to fund the costs of getting the training. I myself was funded through HR to take that as my professional development to do the training and become a trainer of trainers, so that I'm able to offer that locally. And because it's an agreement with the company, with UCN, I brokered first for me not to take any training fee so that we can minimize the cost, so that we can spread it locally. So that's what we're doing. And we started right at the beginning with early childhood education. And thankfully, these two wonderful women jumped right in to embedding it in the program. So our research question is exactly that. Can we do this? This is faculty-supported implementation rather than having whatever professional qualifications you have and going to a one-day thing and then being on your own to do it afterwards. So we're doing it right at the ground up and doing that. And is that going to work? How is it going to impact all of us? The students, as they're graduate, taking that as part of their work, the instructors, which is the main focus really, although you never go there because the story is the fun part. But can they do it? Does this fit? What does it mean? And then the impact in the early childhood, the child care centers to do that. I'm talking a lot now, and then I'm going to let them tell the story. So this is where Friends come from. The website are there on the PowerPoints, and people can contact. Friends is a series of developmentally appropriate programs that do the same thing right across. We actually don't have the Resilience for Life upper one yet in Canada. The program comes from Australia, and the Canadian people Canadianize it for us, so that's good. And that is Friends. We use Friends in so many different ways. I'll just give a few seconds for all you quick readers to get the gist. And it's an acronym, so this is what helps, like we do with so many things, ground the program for its use. And for people here, I do have the books that you can have a look at later during lunch hour. I'll leave them around. So it is a social emotional development training program. It's a resiliency building program. All that stuff that are part of what we know if we don't do in our whatever systems we're in, we're not being human and we're not really achieving all those things. And yet they're very much less so as defined curriculum. In the early childhood education program, they are more so defined because you're dealing with little beings, and so it cannot become so programmed and prescriptive. And particularly at UCN, it's a emergent learning focus as well. So there's very quickly the websites, and people can email me, and I'll just forward a slide, or that's maybe something that we can get up somewhere for people to be able to look at. It's done provincially in BC. They have been doing it for about 8 to 10 years now, and the Ministry of Youth and Child Services funds the entire thing so that people in the systems, school systems, can be trained. They even fund the ongoing costs of workbooks and support materials for the students. So my vision is that something similar can somehow happen in Manitoba. Okay, so as soon as I've done the training, then I'm out of the picture. It took a bit to arrange, and these are some pictures from the training. Obviously, there's a training that gets delivered. The program is very experiential, and the training is quite experiential too. So I'll hand off and let the ladies talk about the training.
Hi everyone, my name is Janet Wheaton. When Brenda initially approached me in regards to this opportunity of having the students be part of this Fun Friends training, I immediately seen the connection of how it would fit with their semester 3, which was the focus of social emotional development. And not only focusing on the developmental domain of social emotional development, but how it transferred into the other courses throughout the semester. So it was threaded through each of the semesters, the courses of the semester. So some other pictures of students that are engaged in the training. So like Brenda had indicated, they had hands-on learning. That experiential learning was provided. They were implementing activities. They seen demonstration of how those sessions could be implemented directly from Brenda. She would read stories to the students and participate in activities. They engaged in the activities that would be implemented with the children. So what they experienced in that training was then transferred into working with the children at the childcare centers. So embedding the curriculum, I gave a little bit of discussion of how we implemented the training. Students began to implement the 12 Fun Friends sessions directly into the childcare centers. Students worked in pairs, so if there was one person in their group that didn't receive the training, they were unable to attend, they were partnered with somebody that didn't have the training. So to ensure that there was that mentorship that was happening, the trained person had somebody that didn't receive the training or had the certification. They were provided with guidebooks. So the students that were taking the training, they had the parent guidebook to follow, to be the ones to implement. And then there was a resource book that the uncertified students were able to use as a guide for themselves. The students were placed in childcare centers in the beginning of implementation during the Applied Learning Prep Day. So every Friday, our students would have a designated time which is called Applied Learning Prep. So we took those opportunities for the students to go into the childcare centers and apply these sessions. So they were able to practice what they had just came away from based on the training that they just experienced. It also provided an opportunity at that time that students were able to get to know the programs, get to know the children, and employees of the center. So they were building relationships at the same time before they initially went out in their practical component, which consisted of 3 weeks. So we had an opportunity to make use of that time, and they were getting those practical experiences. Implementing the weekly Fun Friend sessions, they had themes. So although our curriculum isn't based on themes, we focus on, like Brenda had mentioned, emergent curriculum. It had an opportunity for students to focus on sessions that were allocated for each of the weeks. but also provided the flexibility to meet the children's skills, abilities, and interests with options to revise and adapt. So although there was the sessions were focused on themes, they still needed to take into consideration the children's skills, abilities, and interests. So if they weren't interested in that activity that they were implementing, they needed to follow what their interests were and try to revise and adapt to meet those needs. Once again, we have an emergent curriculum, and early childhood education curriculum focuses on that. Students are encouraged to provide interesting opportunities or experiences for children to be engaged in. So with them implementing these sessions, it gave students the ability to practice how to make those activities inviting and attractive to get them to come to those sessions. And we definitely aim for inclusion. So if there was children were never forced to come to the sessions to participate in the activities that were implemented, but they were encouraged by how they made the activities inviting and attractive to entice them to come. So we focus on including all children and finding ways that students could encourage children that weren't maybe interested in that session that was happening at that time, but finding alternative ways to gain their, I guess, their attraction to come and become engaged in the activities. So we talked about our domain in semester 3 being social emotional. We identified that the training met the learning outcomes and competencies for each of the courses in that semester. So it really fit, it was a perfect fit for what our students were transitioning into in their second year of the early childhood education program. We also identified how we could transfer the learning and the training experience and embed it into the semester. So like I had mentioned earlier, not only did it fit with the social emotional course, but also the observation course, and we found ways that it met the learning outcomes through the other courses throughout semester 3. Some of the courses that we embedded the curriculum that it fit with was, once again, social emotional development, the observation, quality practices, well-being of children, family and community relations, and intrapersonal skills. So they were gaining so many skills by implementing these sessions within the childcare centers. So an example of how we also embedded it through the other course content or courses was, for instance, each course has 4 assignments, and there's a rubric that students are to follow. So for social emotional development, students had the main part of the assignment, or I guess the learning outcome 1 or 2. Out of all, they have 4 assignments that they need to complete in each course. So they would get the C+ component in class. They would need to work it through so that they had the foundation of what social emotional development was. And then based on the training that they took part in, they received the additional marks from a B to an A+, so that the work that they've already completed and during the training was now applied to the course content. So they were getting recognition for what they've already worked on. So taking the training, becoming certified, was then allocated so that they received a higher mark. So they would walk away with an A+, essentially, is how we worked it with social emotional development. This was the biggest piece that we found that it really came into play and fit really well with. And that was one of the courses that Vanessa had taught with the students, observing and planning activities for social emotional development. So I'll let Vanessa speak more about that. I mean, I could talk about it, but I want to share the microphone.
Oh, thank you, Janet. So as Janet mentioned, I taught the observations class. So with the students coming in for observations, we would start with the core, all the information they needed to learn for their 4 assignments and their 4 competencies. And then I tied in the fun friends. And again, with that, they had to do observations in the daycares when they were implementing. They also had to come up with the activities. The activities are in the guide, which Brenda had Showing you, oh, that one?
Facilitator's guide.
The facilitator's guide, that's the parent one. So they would take 2 activities from this guide here and write them out on the activity cards that I provided in class. They also had to do a justification form, so telling us why they were doing the activity, what adaptations need to take place, how did they make sure that all children were included in that activity, and any other reasoning behind it, documentation, taking pictures, really looking back at why are we doing these activities and what are the children benefiting from them. So they also had to do a self-reflection. How did they feel when they did this activity? What did they observe from the children? And they also had to do observation forms just based around what they were seeing and what they would like to see happen next. So these are all forms that we use in observations classes. We teach 4 observation courses throughout all 4 semesters, focusing on each domain. So this one fit perfectly with us, this Fun Friends training in the observations class. So with all of that work that they were doing, they would get their C++, as Janet had mentioned, the extra work would be applied. So now they're looking at a B to an A+ from all those forms. From those forms that we were using, they were very familiar with them. They next compiled a portfolio. So as they're working on this, they're putting it into their Applied 3 portfolio, all this work, and they're receiving credit for it, but they're also now building on a professional portfolio. So we were taking all of those forms, all that documentation, pictures, and putting it into one portfolio, which we use for our personal growth and development course, so they can practice putting portfolios together. We also used the training throughout other courses, intrapersonal. That's the course that I teach. So they were looking within themselves, how they can better themselves, how they can strengthen their skills. I also put it into family and community, working with children, working with families. There is a family guide that they're provided with, so they can send home information for families and activities for families to work with their children at home. They applied the theory and practice, again, every Friday, which was great for them. Great practice to work with children too, and implementing activities. That's the big one for our students, is learning how to implement activities and how to engage children in wanting to learn. And it was anxiety and it's socialization skills. So now you're learning about the emotions and how to deal with those emotions in a positive way. And the socialization skills for any child that feels that fear and doesn't want to take part in a group activity. How can we engage them? How can we get them to build on their social skills? So that's what the students were gaining from doing this Fun Friends in the centers. Here's just a picture of the student implementation. This was from the first activity. The children did an activity with our students. They had a ball with stickers on it, and they passed the ball around and asked the children something that they like. And as they answered the question, they got a sticker. Here's another one, understanding our feelings in ourselves and others, so getting to know each other, and that's another picture of that activity as the child's taking a sticker off the ball, and then they'll pass the ball on and the next child will share. This is from session 2, introducing to feelings, understanding nonverbal communication, learning to pay attention to positive cues using our senses. So the students were provided with coloring sheet. It's not normally something we do in ECE. We don't recommend, photocopying and having children complete art that way. We're all about the creativity, letting the children use their imaginations. But with this being a program that already has set activities and set sheets like that in their program, we used them, and we allowed, what I did tell students to do with this activity was to make sure that you're not just providing 2 different colors of crayons, but providing a variety of materials, whether it be paints, whether it be crayons, whether it be markers, pencils. So making sure children have choices. So this is an activity they did with the children, and they ensured that, as you can see in the picture, they did offer a lot of different supplies. Here's session 3, introduction to feelings, learning to cope with our feelings in a helpful way. So developing that empathy and helping others. And in this picture, again, they created a resource in class. And that was a big thing for observations also, is creating the resources so that you have them to use with the children to get them engaged. So they have that visual cue also. Session 4, paying careful attention. And this is where they got into the green thoughts, the positive thoughts, and the red thoughts, where the negative thoughts. And they were trying to teach children how to understand what is a green thought and what is a red thought. And how do we change those thoughts? So as we get into these sessions now, they're learning to identify what's red and what's green, negative and positive. And then the next session goes into how do we help change those red thoughts we're having, that anxiety we're having, how do we deal with it in a positive way? So there's just a few more pictures here of the students implementing the activities. There is a picture there of one of our students reading a book. The reading component is a really big piece to the Fun Friends. We do language and literacy development in semester 2, so this tied in really nicely because the students had already completed their language and literacy domain. So the books were wonderful, another wonderful resource for our students to use with the children. There is a stoplight picture there that they used. Again, children identify the red being the negative, the green being the positive. So they've made these stoplights in class and used them with the children to talk about how do we go from that red to green. So I'm going to pass this on to Brenda again.
Okay, now I'm going to do a time check. We kind of went with the, let's make sure we get the core stuff covered because we can really trail off into lots and lots of stories, and I'm hearing some of them that probably need to be told. I just want to comment on a couple of things. One about the coloring, and I love how you do it. So it's not that a particular activity is mandated to do. Mm-hmm. The way the program works is presenting these things. So in the Fun Friends, there's 12 sessions. In the next level up, which is from about grade 2 to 6, I mean, age appropriate, they can always go different ways. And the third one, there's 10 sessions and then booster sessions a month or so apart. The Fun Friends that we're talking about, that there is a parent manual, and this is the only item out of it that you can get without being certified, which did give us that awesome backdrop. So we were still, some students, for whatever happened, weren't able to make it to the training, but it just did make life a lot easier for us, for everybody, because we could still give them this and they could work alongside someone to do it. And I really need to put in another order for these. I order extra. I have so many, just an absolute growing number of parents that, because you know people in different ways, and they hear you're doing things and they ask for something, and I have been distributing this in family, friends, colleagues, and other places. So it is good. Also, within the actual facilitator's manual, there's a take-home page. And I know this fits in well with how the child care center, at least at UCN, works, that there are these things. So the idea is that you send a page home with activities that people can choose to do. Obviously, the more the home's involved, the better, no matter what. With the older the programs for the older students, there is a workbook, but when you are trained to do these, you are told repeatedly, don't use the workbook as your sessions, right? But what the report and the research is that the students who are older and so are using them, after the program's over, they retain that and they'll go, because they've learned to problem solve and cope and everything. And so this is their reference afterwards and families' references afterwards. Mm-hmm. So, but when we all come from the system and when a student sees a variety and choice in activities plus some sample pages of things you might do, guess where the first place you go is? Yeah. Unless you've really taken in your Keenan Alpert training, you go to that ditto that you can do. So I just didn't want to leave the impression that you have to do those things. You don't. There's a wide, and you can make up your own. they're just things to get you going so that you're working in that area of exploring my feelings first, understanding that other people have feelings second, and so on through the concepts that are there for each one. So the red and green thoughts, yes, and in the training, not this one, but the next one up training, the one for school age, there's an activity that we do in the training where people can choose to be whatever they want to be, a truck, a skidoo, or whatever, and then as the trainer, you call out thoughts, and they have to put the brakes on if it's a red thought, and think about how to change that in a green thought. So, I'll never be able to do this presentation today. I've done things like this before, and I'll have people with me. Maybe it'll be okay. Okay? So, and that's just a whole ongoing process throughout the training and throughout the presentation. The other thing is that this is a set program. It's set in the way that that support is there for you. And hopefully with what Janet and Vanessa have shared, it embeds so easily. And we started off, Janet and I, talking about it in a little way that, well, we know it'll be really good, so we're going to go for it anyway and put it in. And once we got involved, Vanessa, all the EC instructors took the training so they could be certified to do, not train, but do the training, to do the program. And Vanessa's like, wow, I love this, I love this. And all the way through they're going, oh, this will fit there, and this joins that. It provided, like Janet said, that thread to pull together. So lots of the things are things you would be teaching anyway, but you teach it here, and you teach something else here, and something else here. And it provided that link to, and just the more they did, the more it linked, the more it's embedding. And so, we'll be looking at that into our BEd program and the courses and how we might offer it within that as well to take it through. So it's very fresh. Hence the research, you know how things are. Like, even if you intuitively know something's good, but you learn a lot in doing the research too. So the research really is about that question. We do a lot of talking together, not anywhere near as much as we need to, but I travel a lot, so that reduces it. But we, as soon as we get together, we're like, okay, now focus. What's our research question? Let's make sure we're doing that. We are doing it all, but the stories just start flowing and are just such really good stories. So the focus is about that embedding, this change of instructional practice. And I think, again, the keynote this morning spoke to that in so many ways. And as I say, this is what these wonderful women are doing for the benefit of all.
I just want to add something, if I could, just in regards to the training. In ECE, you're continually learning, taking a different part in different professional development opportunities. And we try as much as possible to take part in any community opportunities that are being offered. So if we can go and participate in a local professional development workshop, anything that's being offered, we sign our students up and we take part and find a way that that training can be threaded and embedded into the curriculum that they're taking. So for instance, they're having a workshop that's coming up in February for attachment in FASD. So students are registered, they're taking part, so we're going to, after that training, we take it and bring it back and we apply it to course content that they would be normally sitting in the classroom taking it, but we've taken the learning outside of the classroom. So that learning outside of the classroom is very important. They get to network with other professionals and also see the relevance and the importance of lifelong learning. Learning doesn't just stop after they've received their diploma, it continues. So we strive to promote that and see, hopefully help the students see the value and the importance of it. They come away with certificates like they did with the training for Fun Friends. So they're also building on their portfolios, their professional portfolios of what they're coming away from our program with. So we've seen the value in in any kind of training opportunities, and especially when it involves not only working with children and families, but opportunities for themselves. So finding workshops that might be self-help for themselves as professionals to work through. So I just wanted to include that in that as well. Is there anything that you want to add to that? Yeah.
All right, so the research, as you've heard explained, there's lots of data that's being collected during the course that can be available, and of course the research phase doesn't actually start until once the course is over, so we don't have any power differentials going on. And you heard Janet explain how, I mean, if they really didn't want to do it, they didn't have to. They could find other things to do. So, which is walking the talk of how they're being trained to work with the children themselves in the childcare centres. So they walk and talk their emergent curriculum at the same time as managing to, there is a certain level that for certification you need to reach. So where we're at right now is they know all that. We had a focus group with the students couple of weeks ago. So we're going to share a little bit of that now. And again, I'll let Janet and Vanessa talk about it. So that focus group, it was very evident that anxiety was not unfamiliar to the students there. And so even finding ways to do that so that we could get the input. But we know we've got rich data from their course activities, and that's where it'll come from as well, because they all agreed that those things could be used, and they shared their pictures and things like that. So that's all covered. This is an ongoing thing in that part. In terms of being sold on it totally and extending it, we'll talk to that in a few minutes. Okay. So as Brenda mentioned, students then began to identify their own anxieties and where they are now as an adult and where those anxieties stem from. And so they started to make those connections for themselves personally. So it was also a growing opportunity for them. It was, a wonderful opportunity for them to also see that they had choices. So although we provide many opportunities for them to become engaged in professional development opportunities, taking the learning outside of the classroom, they also had choices. If they chose not to participate, then they can follow the course content on the rubric that was listed in regards to how we were applying the training. So no one was ever forced into taking part in any training or anything that they didn't feel comfortable about taking. So but what we found is that any hands-on experience, those experiential learning opportunities, they gravitated to those, which was more work than actually going through the course rubric and completing the components there. So we do a lot of fundraising as well. So it's providing them the tools and skills to be able to fundraise. Those take a number of more time and hours to get students into those kinds of things as the training. But they didn't recognize that. They were more focused on applying that training directly with children and seeing more value out of that. It cemented their learning, opposed to talking about it in class and reading about it in a book and writing it down for the assignment. So this cemented the training. It reinforced what they took. They took the experiences that they experienced during the training sessions itself. So what they learned from Brenda's training and the experiences, they were more comfortable to apply those sessions than with the children because they had themselves experienced those sessions. So some of the reflections that the students had indicated, they were excited about meeting the new children, seeing the smile on their faces. So we had really great feedback from them. They felt important that they had a purpose of being there, and they enjoyed being engaged. Some of the other reflections that were there, that students had shared, was talking with children and hearing about their stories. So during these sessions,
it was topics or discussions that were brought up from children, what made them happy, what made them sad, and getting them to recognize it's okay to have those sad, mad, angry feelings, but it was providing them with the tools to cope. So when we have a 2 or 3-year-old that's expressing their emotions and don't really have the words to explain it, we can give them the tools to learn how to cope through those challenging and difficult times. As we've said in the classroom, we're 40-something years old, and sometimes we have a hard time keeping our emotions in check, and we expect a 2 or 3-year-old to, what's wrong with you? Why, why are you having a difficult time with, why are you screaming? But meanwhile, they've only been living for 24 months. They haven't even figured out the way of the world. So, that's the best way to explain it for students, for them to relate. We say 2 or 3 years old, but when you put it into months, they haven't been living for very long to understand what works and what doesn't in the world. So they started to make those connections as well. So the biggest thing is providing the children with the tools, and it's okay and recognize that it's okay to have these emotions. It is the way of the world. It's what we experience as human beings. I'll let you take on a little bit more, some student reflections.
Yeah, so the students did have some wonderful reflections. They had wonderful experiences, and that's what I found when I would teach the observations. We'd start with our core information, and then towards the end, I'd give them some time to work on their fun friends because they're partnered up. Now, one story I have to share is the one student who was partnered up with one student who was trained and she wasn't. So the one student who was untrained went into the center by herself and just took it on. No manual, nothing. She looked at the parent one, but she just went based around what she was observing with the children and what she was learning in class about social and emotional development. So she was picking out storybooks, and then when Brenda gave us the list, I put it in class for the books, and she went down to the library and made sure she got the appropriate books to match the themes. But the activities that she was implementing in the sessions, they were all from her own mind. She just pulled them out saying, I'm going to do a fun friends tree, a feelings tree, she called it. And so when she brought me back the documentation and her self-reflection, I was reading it and I brought it to Janet's attention and I said, I just realized this one student is working on her own and she's not trained. But look at these activities and look at these resources she's come up with all on her own. And they fit quite well. So as Brenda was saying, you don't have to go strictly based around the manual, as long as you're hitting that social and emotional component. So we've seen that just from the student, implementing, using her own observations based around the children and their interests, it works. You can go with the manual and a lot of my students did take pieces from the manual or did the activities that Brenda implemented with them at training because they felt comfortable. So, and we let them do that, and that's wonderful. But yeah, the one student, it was amazing to see her go ahead and just run with it. Yeah. So that was wonderful to see. Here's some favorite memories. And again, the students were always happy just to be there. This is a applied Friday prep day for them, so they can be in the classroom or they can work from home. Now we're sending them out into the child care centers, in the mornings to implement these sessions. And it was great to have those memories come back where they were just happy to be engaged with the children and learning something new. So it was always wonderful to hear back from them, such positive feedback from the students, because I always make it a point of asking them, how did it go on Friday? And this is a Monday afternoon class that I would ask them.
So there was always a debriefing session that happened.
We never left them without the support.
A reflection piece.
Yes. Their self-reflections also had to state how they felt. What were their anxieties? How did the activities go? How did the children react?
Yeah, what worked, what didn't, what could we change to make a difference for the next session?
The last session, the children didn't want them to leave. And even the directors were giving positive feedback, saying it was wonderful. They did a milkshake bubbles activity. It was wonderful. They blew bubbles into a glass of water with straws. The children loved it. One of my students decided instead of water or milk, they were going to make chocolate milk So they poured chocolate syrup into the milk and they turned it into chocolate milk, which was wonderful because it was based around what the children asked for. Just some more memories on the students. They did a poster activity to wrap up their session 12 with the children. So again, it was all about the feelings the children were having. Again, there's the support. I talked a little bit about the library having the books for the Fun Friends sessions and partnering up the students. That really helped. And again, one student just ran with it all on her own. We try to support our students as best as we can. So again, we did take the training to help show our support. And then this is just a little bit about our instructor reflections. So again, providing that focus to the students, taking part in the training with them, making sure that, everything that we provided them, we provide them with the tools. So any sheets that I provided them for observations classes, they were very familiar with them.
They also had an opportunity in class to create those activities. So they had an understanding of what all entailed in the involvement of that activity. So they didn't just go that first day and look at their manual and this is what we're implementing. They had an opportunity in class that they worked on and then brought it forward when they went to their session.
Yep, they created all their resources in class. I'll let you have this one.
So once again, reflection from the childcare staff, like Vanessa had indicated, very excited. Staff members were anticipating students coming in because it also provided an opportunity for someone else to engage children in activities. It wasn't the same people that were working at the childcare centers that were implementing activities. Having a new face, a new take on activities tended to have the children gravitate to new people. So how we can improve this, provide more in-class opportunities to practice. So because it was all happening so fast, if we kind of just, now that I'm looking at the card that says only 4 minutes, I've lost my train of thought. No, so it was, there's a few indications of, how we can improve, and we've got them listed on the PowerPoint. So we had to be creative in certain aspects of it, delivering the structure of the program within the emergent learning philosophy, negotiating when students were absent, so how we worked around that, availability of materials. So when we first started the program, we didn't have a whole lot of resources like the library books. So we improvised, found books that best fit and went with it. I'll let Brenda continue.
Okay, so what came out of our focus group, really working on the ground with us talking and then discussing with the students, is that they're going to do a second round of implementation in their final 6-week placement. Now, remember, we're focusing on, we know the program's being researched, so that's not an issue. So we are focusing on the students. We had to kind of work around how we're going to do this. But, so they're actually going to do 2 sessions a week, which is faster than is recommended doing it, but they're going to be there all day, so it's not going to be going in to do a small session. They'll have that opportunity to start threading their own work through it, not be just about one thing, but focusing on the core thing, understanding my feelings throughout 2 or 3 days. So for the students, they'll get a stronger experience. And we'll continue the research on that. So I think we've probably talked to most of that. We have added an adult resiliency skills to the program as well, which is another training that I have. So we'll just finish with some little pictures. Celebrating on the last day. They planned different parties and things like that for them and celebrating all their successes.
And having this last session, it was really important that the applied learning components, there's an area there for dramatic play. So this fit really nicely with what the students needed to implement in their portfolio development, because it was a criteria that was listed in their course outline. So they just pulled what they implemented for dramatic play and embedded it into their portfolio for Applied 3.
And you get to say the last one.
Oh yes, Friends on Friday. That was what I was calling it to the students. I wanted to put a nice little title to it so they get a little bit more excited. So yes, I was calling it Friends on Friday. And again, they made new friends in the center. As you can see, they wrapped up with a nice little party that the children decided, what kind of party are we going to have to wrap up our friends sessions? So it worked wonderfully. And the students based it around their interests. And some had tea parties, some had a Christmas party, others just had a dress-up party. So it was based around the children's interests. And again, it goes back into emergent curriculum. That's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.